Today, this is what we're making for you. Sherryann is showing us how she does her homemade pasta. And it's a little bit noisy, but it is very, very good.
So far, all I've done is put 3 cups of flour in a bowl and made a hole in the middle called a well. And I've cracked 4 eggs.
About how long is it going to take?
Well, not very long. We combine the ingredients and knead it for about 3 minutes. It said to turn it out onto a floured bowl. I just knead it in the bowl because it's easier for me. Right now, I've got my olive oil that's been in the fridge. And I'm hoping to be able to get 2 tablespoons out of it. Okay, so I've got the 3 cups of flour in here. I've got 4 eggs, large eggs. I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of water. And now all I'm doing is mixing all those liquid things. And they don't have to be perfect, but I'm mixing all of those liquid things. And then I'm going to put them in the well. I'm going to move the flour into the well. I'm trying to get all the flour moistened. Eventually you want a mix that has incorporated everything. If you find that it's really sticky because you're in a humid place, then you can add a little more flour, but add it gradually. If you find that it's so dry you just can't get all the flour to get moistened by a little bit of that stuff we put in the center, then you can add a little bit more water, but once again do it very gradually, a few drops at a time, or teaspoon at a time kind of thing. But I've got it mostly kind of crumbs. Most of the flour is moistened. I'm going to go in with my hand now and get it to try to stick together as a dough. I'm just squeezing it together, just gradually trying to make sure it's all stuck together. Once it's stuck together, I'll keep kneading it until for about 3 minutes. I'm going to wrap that in aluminum foil. I'm going to break it into probably 3 pieces so it's easier to work with later. I'm going to wrap, kind of squish it down into discs. Obviously not perfect, who cares? 3 of them that size, and put them into wrap them tightly with plastic wrap, leave them for 15 minutes. Not a very fancy brand, it doesn't need to be. Not a very fancy setup. This is all elbow grease and muscle power. Okay, I'm getting ready to make the pasta. My dough has sat and rested for 15 minutes. I've got some flour on just some regular cookie sheets because when the dough comes out, it needs to sit to either dry or use it immediately or freeze it. Those are the 3 options. All of them work pretty well. I tend to usually dry it and use some immediately because we go through it pretty quickly, and I do small batches so it's always fresh. The machine is very simple. This slides down in. This is the handle to crank. And this is a clamp to keep it on. This is just an old cutting board. And one time we had lost the clamp, and Anna Lynn and I did it without the clamp. One of us would hold the machine down the best we could, but we had flour on the surface, of course, and holding that machine still while somebody else is turning it is really hard. We were skating all over it. Probably took us twice as long to make pasta that time as normal. Okay, I should have had this turned up probably sooner. Anna Lynn's going to take one of these and rip off about a third to a half of it. Start making a flat little pancake that we can run through the machine.
Can I put this somewhere else?
The first thing we'll do is roll it through progressively tighter and tighter rollers. And it makes flat sheets. You can use the flat sheets for lasagna. In fact, I usually do make a lasagna while I am doing this. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, she's got a flat piece. We're going to make sure it has some flour on it. Not a ton, but some. We want it on the smallest setting. Then it goes into the hole right there. And we crank, we try not to make pasta out of anybody's fingers. It cranks through, comes out the bottom.
And we do that usually twice on each setting.
Yep. And if it starts to get sticky, we flour it some more. Okay, that's twice through on one. Change it to two. You want to start with it fairly skinny because each time it gets squished and gets a little bit flatter
Fairly
and
thick.
longer. Okay, you roll through. We're doing it on 3 now. Move it to 5. Now you want to think about what do you want to eat. If that's cut in thin in noodles, see about how thick it is. It'll swell a little bit when you cook it, but not as much as dried pasta because it's fresh pasta. And when you cook it, you want to cook it in water that's got a little salt in it, and you want to cook it not very long. It doesn't take nearly as long as dried pasta. You can see this is what we've been doing for fettuccine. You can roll it thinner for lasagna and just put down the sheets wet, put your filling, layer it. Always put a layer of filling underneath the first row of noodles because then they don't stick to the pan. That's a trick I learned. The other thing you can do is you can make a sheet of these, lay them out, put some filling in for raviolis, put another sheet across, and cut between the lumps, press around the edges to make sure they're sealed, and boil them until they come to the top. Once they come to the top, they're done, as long as the filling was cooked beforehand. All right, we're ready for more fettuccine. I'm gonna rip that one in half so we don't have such long pasta on our plate.
Oh, we're doing that one. Okay, that's good.
Then we're just removing the handle and moving it over to the next hole. We're gonna make some fettuccine out of this, unless you want spaghetti for tomorrow.
I like fettuccine better.
I like fettuccine better as well. So, yeah, the tricky part is getting that tip to feed in, but once it does, there it goes. I have an old machine that squeaks. See, the rollers are meshed up, so it's about that. I ripped that last piece that we flattened in half because I don't want a piece of fettuccine twice that length on my plate to try to deal with. So, whatever length you're happy with, that's what ours turned out to be. Then,
We put it over here
put it over here.
and let it dry.
Yep, we toss it a little bit, spread it out, and it'll dry. Takes, depending on how humid your climate is, can take a day or so. We toss it, except when we've been sleeping, we toss it every couple hours move it around so there don't end up any wet spots that stick together. And then it'll last for quite a while. These are really good in homemade chicken noodle soup, but you want to add them at the very end, otherwise they'll just disintegrate into mush in your soup. Another good thing about them, however, is, see, I've flipped them in flour, and the flour that clings to them helps to thicken the soup a little bit, which is really nice.
Okay.
Any dough left on like the side of your bowl that you were kneading in, what I found is if you stick it immediately in water, what happens is it gets mushy and gluier and even harder to clean off your pan. But if you let it just sit in the air to air dry, then you can scrape it off really easily with a spatula or your thumbnail and then wash the bowl.
I am cooking up the homemade noodles that we made yesterday. Should be about done. There is our dinner. Some homemade pasta, half a pound of Parmesan, a stick of butter, some garlic powder and some onion powder and a little bit of basil. And I think we're about ready to go.